Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
All right, welcome back to podcast 58 of 2019. I think the most we ever had in a year was maybe like 70-some podcasts. I think we're going to blow that away this year. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can tweet me at OBKiev or tweet us at The Odds Breakers. Follow us on social media / The Odds Breakers. This episode is being sponsored by betonline.ag for a 50% sign-up bonus and some very early lines. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com/betonline. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out and sponsor our website and podcast, we'd love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member for $17.99 a month. You'll get access to some of our pages, my plays, and premium plays before the line moves. For $2 more, you can have all that and become a patron subscriber and get the podcast a little bit earlier. If nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. My friends, we have a fantastic show for you today. Marco D'Angelo from WagerTalk.com has come back to cover some college and NFL football games this week. And my God, I cannot believe how fast this season is going. We are already over halfway through the college football regular season.
Unreal.
Man, football, it flies by. You have so much fun. You're betting the games. You're watching them. You're thinking about them. You're checking the lines. Being a total degenerate, as we love to be. But I tell you, the good news about when college football and NFL football ends is that it goes right into college basketball. As a matter of fact, college basketball starts in November, as we all know. So sprinkle in some plays, a little bit heavier in December, and then you go full board January, February into March Madness. And you know, March Madness is my favorite time of year. So I'm going to keep bringing content and hopefully keep winning some games. So without further ado, I want to get into this podcast with Marco because we talk a very long time, cover some great information for you. So let's get Marco D'Angelo on right now. And now I am very excited to welcome back one of the best and most respected handicappers in all of Las Vegas. You've seen and heard from him many times watching Bet On It and heard him on the WagerTech podcast. I am very pleased to welcome back Mr. Marco D'Angelo from WagerTalk.com. You can follow Marco on Twitter at Marco in Vegas. Marco, how's the football season been treating you?
Well, I'll sum it up for you. It's been a really good 5-week stretch for us, and last night was the example of it. That game could have went either way. I was on the under last night, and I got the old slide at the 3-yard line. So when you're running good, Kiev, it just seems like you're running good with everything.
It's just amazing what happens when players are do what they're supposed to do. That is exactly what they're supposed to do, and props to him for doing that. And it helped me cash the Lions ticket at +4.5. But we have a couple other things to say about that game coming up in the questioning, my man. But I know you're a super busy guy at this time of season, so I want to kind of get right into it here with you. As a general question first, what are some of the things that you have noticed since sports betting has become legalized? Well, the ban's been lifted, it's popping up in all these states, more books are showing up. What are some of the things that you've noticed that is of interest?
Well, obviously there's a bigger demand for sports betting content, more so than ever before, and shows like your podcast, Kiev, and, you know, the new show that you talked about with us at Wager Talk, Bet On It, everybody, I mean, they're starving for information because we've got a lot of new people coming to the table that, you know, have never bet before. You know, I can tell you, my nephew back in Pittsburgh. We've got betting now. He has never made a bet in his life. He's a school teacher, just regular Joe. And, now he's got an app and he's firing in, not big wagers, but it's a situation where you've got people that have never done it and they want to do it. And because for so long, Kiev, guys like us that were betting money and, this is what we do for a living, we were tabbed as degenerates. We had that black eye. There was that stigma to, was taboo what we did. Now all of a sudden we're the cool kids. Okay, it's cool to be betting, have action in the game, and I think where it's really going to resonate is we're energizing an entire younger population, and that's the market that you want. People that advertise in normal businesses, what demographic do they go after? They go after, those males, from, the 25 to, 35 range, disposable cash and everything else. Those are the guys that are coming to the table, and it makes it good for everybody that's in our industry in providing content, and people can't get enough of it right now.
Completely agree, my man, and that is awesome. School teachers doing it, politicians. Heck, I had a guy, a news anchor, reach out to me. I'm not going to mention any names, but he's been getting some advice in one of the states up north. So it's just pretty cool how we were the degenerates, now the cool kids, just like you said, and it just kind of makes me feel like finally, after the bad names that they gave sports bettors, now it's all changed its tune. And so happy about that. And, guys like you, way ahead of the curve here, they've been doing it for years. No better person to get information from. That's why I'm so happy to have you on the Oddsbreakers, Marco. And I really appreciate it, my man.
No problem. You have one last point on that where we're in a crossroads with the legalization in all of the other states, where it's almost like a throwback if you want to go 20 to 25 years ago in Vegas, when you had all of the different casinos in sports books. There were independent sports books up and down the strip. Now it seems like, there's like 5 that own everything. But you've got in these other states where New Jersey, for example, they're going to take a lot of money on the Giants and the Jets. And when we get to the point where we start to see regional numbers, okay, as opposed to in Vegas, everything's across the board. You're going to find maybe a half a point difference here or there. You're shopping.
Right.
But once we start getting the regional sports, having the sports book having their numbers where they're tainted to the local teams and so forth, because that's what they're getting action on, well, you're going to see syndicates come into play again. And instead of, what they used to call runners in Vegas, you're going to have runners in different states. And people that want to bet against New York and bet against the Giants and Jets, they're going to have their guy sitting in that New Jersey sports book getting the money down there at the better number. And then they might be here in Vegas taking the normal number. And, these guys look for edges. They're advantage players, and that's going to be something that's going to be curious to see if the books shut the doors on the advantage players. If they see certain groups, certain guys that are only betting the off numbers, if they boot them out of the casinos.
And I wonder if the government's going to get involved in that. It's kind of a segregation in a way to stop people from betting once it's been legalized, in a way. It's like, why can you take action from somebody else and not take it from another person? That's a good question right there. It's not his fault that he's smart. It's not his fault that he did the research, right? I wonder about that a lot. It's been going on for years in Las Vegas, right?
Right. And, guys get booted out all the time or get put on, strict limits.
Right.
So we'll see. That's where it's at. Right now, the books are very generous with trying to attract new customers and doing, really, the deals that I've seen from some of the books that have opened up in Jersey and Pennsylvania, for example, remind me of the old days, going back to the offshore sports books with as much money as they were, giving you, match play for, a deposit and stuff. And it's, it's like the wild, wild west right now. Everybody's trying to stake their claim and grab those clients. It's a land grab. And, they figure once you get in the door, they got you. And I know, one of the places back in Pennsylvania, and I don't want to say which book it was because I don't remember, but I know I had several buddies. They were matching your first bet up to $500. It was a free bet. So, I mean, why not put $500 in your account and bet one game, take that 50-50 shot, and if you're right, you've got a $1,000 bankroll to start with. If you're wrong, you still have your $500 bankroll to start with.
Absolutely. No rollover limit on that, I'm guessing?
No. Wow. No. I mean, they wanted you in the door, and, they got them. And, so kudos to everybody that's doing it. Now that you get the clients, that's where we, see how these books are going to do. And like I said, if they take everybody's action, or if they start booting sharp players.
Yeah, that's so interesting. With the ability to do that, and so can't wait to see how that comes to fruition. Like you said, the Wild Wild West. Let's see what happens. Syndicates coming in, betting both sides of three. That they love to do that if they can get -110. So we'll see where that goes. And I think there's more competition, like you said, to get your dollar. There's more books popping up. And do you think the books are a little sharper? I think that, some books are coming out early, with the lines and earlier so they can get your money right away. But I would wonder if the books are a little sharper. I feel they are, but what are your thoughts on that?
Definitely. I mean, this is an information age, and everybody has the information. I mean, the stats, the advanced metrics, and everything that everybody uses. I mean, you sit there and you look at the games. I mean, last night, for example, the Monday Night Football game, it came down to a coin flip. It was the final, 2 minutes of the game. Was both decisions were in the balance, both side and total, and that's a job well done. And we know the NFL. That's everybody says it's the toughest sport to beat because everybody knows everything about all the teams. So the lines are the tightest of any sport. But it's definitely information age. Now, we'll see with all of the different books and people coming out early. The big story here in Vegas has been Circa. Right. They're making a splash. There's no question about it. Derek Stevens, the owner of the D and Golden Gate downtown, and soon to be the big mega property Circa. I think it's opening up in December of 2020. This is a situation where they're going to be the big player on the block. For so long, the Superbook Westgate was probably the most recognizable sports book because of their contest and everything. But Circa comes out of the gate with their NFL version of a contest this year. They guaranteed $1 million first place prize. It took the Westgate until just a couple years ago to get to that $1 million first place prize money, and Circa did it in their first year. And when the new book is open at the property that they're building, it is going to be the largest sports book in the world. I've seen the renderings of the property or what they're going to be doing. It's a 2-story sports book. There won't be a bad seat in the house. It's great. They're going to have a studio in there. Beeson, that right now is at South Point, is going to have a studio there as well. I don't know if they're going to be solely there or if they're going to split time at the two properties, but it's going to be I can't wait for it because competition is good for the players. If there's more competition, these guys have to do things the right way. They can't gouge you. And that's one of the things that we've seen in the other states where because they're the only game in town and it's new, they can take advantage of you on the juice on games and stuff. We saw that in the baseball season, where the splits were different. Here in Vegas, we're getting 10-cent lines, and for your listeners that don't, understand what that is a 10-cent line. If the line is -150, you're getting back 140 on the other side. Well, some of these other properties weren't doing that back east and that. They were giving you maybe a 15-cent or 20-cent straddle, and that just puts money in the books' pockets. And if it's the only place you can go, what are you going to do? Yeah, so we'll see what happens. But, here with all of the competition, you have different books. I know, for an example, back in March Madness, which is a very popular time, South Point was running reduce juice during the games to attract customers. And if all things are equal, the line's the same at two different properties, but I can lay 105 or 108 instead of laying 110 or laying 110. Excuse me. You're going to do it. It might not sound like a lot, but that 3 to 5% difference in hold that you're laying there, that puts a lot on your on your bottom dollar at the end of the season. When you add up all those losses that you have, and let's face it, when you're playing big volume, you're going to have losses. The most successful handicappers are going to be around 55 or 56% long term. That means you're losing 44% of the time.
Right.
And people hear that, Kiev, and they say, that's ridiculous. You can't make money like that. Oh, yes, you can. If you're playing just straight wagers, you're not playing all the parlays and all the goofy stuff, and you're grinding out that kind of numbers per win percentage over long term, you're going to make a lot of money. Trust me.
Oh, absolutely. And I already did those calculations on the website, theoddsbreakers.com. Sports Betting 101 shows exact calculation why 56% bettors are very profitable in the long run. That is for sure. Well, great information there. I cannot wait for that circuit to be done myself, man. Well, from all I read about it, it just sounds like a sports betting paradise. And, with all the apps in town, they're not going to be in Vegas juicing anything to one side or the other. So that is absolutely fantastic. So real quickly then, looking at college football, do you have any surprises to you this year compared to last year?
Well, I'll tell you, the biggest surprise, and if you ask the sportsbook directors, they're going to be crying about it, and the top teams just keep winning and winning big. And you know that you're always going to pay a premium for betting in Ohio State or betting in in Alabama. Wisconsin's getting a lot of love now this year. They can't put numbers up big enough for these teams not to cover. And we know that, long term, for us as sharp players, when we see a number that's inflated, we're taking the dog just because of value. And we know that long term, if I'm getting 2 to 3 points more than I should be getting in this game, long term I'm going to be a winner taking those extra points. But these big teams just keep finding ways to win, and and lo and behold, if it comes down to the fourth quarter and it seems like okay, here's this is where it's going to end, they're not going to cover. They're punching in that last touchdown, almost like the coaches know the point spread. They don't look at the point spreads. Yeah, come on. So that's been the one big surprise for me. The other surprise has been the SEC. For years, we talk about the SEC and how it's a power conference. They play hard-nosed football, smash mouth. That's not the case anymore. They're moving more and more to what is the normal for college football these days, with the wide open offenses, and it's I think going at the quicker paces is hurting the defenses. Everybody wants to go with these up-tempo offenses, and that's great. You score a lot of points. But what ends up happening is you're putting your defense right back out on the field, and, they're playing too many defensive plays. And what's happening is, uncharacteristically, the books at the beginning of the season, they put up numbers based on history, okay? And this is, what normally would be, maybe a 50 or a 51. These teams are scoring like crazy, and they should be a 57 or a 58, and it's taken them a while to get there. And the overs have been coming in, in the conference, and it's been a situation where that's another spot that's hurting the books.
No kidding, man. It's like when they're playing at a high pace, it affects the spread that much more because there's more plays to be scored upon. So that is a fantastic point. And some of these SEC teams are rolling up those scores. You see Joe Brady's offense with LSU right there, just killing it, spreading it out. If you can do it efficiently, you wear down the other defense, you win by a lot. If you're like UMass and do it inefficiently, well, it gives the other team more points to score against you. So you got to be sure about that. But looking at Alabama, a couple years back, we never thought of Alabama as a big overs team, and they're pretty much hitting the over themselves. That's fantastic. What I've noticed is that hasn't been a ton of weather yet in some of these games, and I think they're delaying them a little bit longer and getting that a little bit earlier. Maybe, I don't know what that means. Maybe it's just luck, but nobody bets the over based on a sunny day or with no wind, because the weather only affects unders. So I hope people know that, to the climate that they're in, whether it be a dome, a game in Madison, Wisconsin, or a game in Lubbock. And so I think people need to realize that the weather will affect the total in the game under, but make sure you get on it early if you find out that information early, because people are already kind of catching in tune to that. But go ahead.
To add to that, Kiev, is don't overreact to weather that is rain and snow. Wind 100%. If you're a passing team and you've got windy conditions, that's a killer. But I think too often people overreact to rain and snow and say, okay, well, nothing's going to happen here. It's going to be an under. Remember that whenever you're playing offense, the offensive player knows what he's going to do. He knows the play, he knows where he's going to on the field, and he knows when he's making his cut. The defender does not. It's reaction. And if somebody's going to slip, more often than not, it's going to be the defensive player that slips, not the offensive player, because he's preparing his body for the cut. And I've seen it too often that people overreact to snow and want to bet the under right away. They can still move the football in snow.
Absolutely. The running game, it helps the running game. Yeah. And if they're getting 10 yards a pop, the clock is stopping anyway. So that is fantastic point there. I look at the wind. If it's over 12, 15-ish, that's where I start, think about making an underplay. But anything under that, that's a great point, Marco. You might be able to get an overreaction on the market, like you said.
Right.
If people betting because of a bunch of rain, and these are running teams, this is a beautiful overbet in the making. Fantastic. Let's quickly talk about the NFL here, and I'll start here. Some of the surprises, and I was really happy about the review before the season started about the whole pass interference review. I thought I've lost a lot of games on bad pass interference, no calls, missed calls, as you saw with the Saints last year, one of the most egregious ones in history. But now you look at these officials; they do what they want. It's you can see them be biased, and you don't know if they plan on being biased or if maybe it's just subconscious. These guys are a little bit older. They're running around out there, and you can just see some games that are crazy lopsided. And obviously, we don't have to get into the Lions Packer game too much, but that was a huge example. I'm glad that the national media finally got into complaining about it, because 3 years ago, when I'm sitting here yelling in my microphone on the podcast, people would tweet at me and say, "Quit complaining about the officials." Well, now I feel vindication, my friend, that everybody's finally talking about it. It's like they started reviewing offensive pass interference that was there that wasn't called, and you see it as a viewer be like, "Oh, they're going to overturn it," and the refs don't overturn it. It's like communist Russia out there. Yeah. What's blue is green. They tell you what's red is yellow. What the hell is going? How do you not overturn the obvious? So everything is up in the air right now. But as far as last night's game, I got a crazy little stat for you. The Packers, they lead the league in beneficial penalty yards at 501. And the Lions are dead last at beneficial penalty yards at 234. Just thought I'd throw that out there. No, don't know if you can apply it.
All the conspiracy theorists would say, the NFL, who do you want in a Super Bowl? Detroit or Green Bay?
Right. Yeah, that's...
and that's the sad part of it. And any time that there's a game that falls, like we said last night, the sequence of the final few plays dictated whether or not, the dog or the favorite was going to cover, or if it was going to be an over or under. And any time that there's, a nationally televised game like that, you have a couple questionable calls, and then you have a player sliding at the 2-yard line. There's going to be, everybody's going to cry, it's fixed. Vegas needed that. They put the call into the NFL. That's why he went down. That's the most insane, talk about bad calls, yes. But when you're talking about, the NFL, Vegas called the NFL and told them what they needed. Seriously?
Vegas, it's bad for Vegas for that. They want an even game. They don't want. Yeah, Vegas stops corruption. You know, they don't want to have anything to do with it because it makes sports betting look bad. They don't want any of that. I think that officials make mistakes inadvertently. They don't know that subconsciously they're favoring a team, whatnot. They don't plan it out. Maybe there's camaraderie there. I think they're just human, right? And the NFL has a bunch of terrible rules, and it's very hard to officiate this game, which makes some of these mistakes more egregious. But when you're flat out judging yourself by looking at your own replay and saying it wasn't there when it was, that's where I see an issue, and that's where I need to see an eye in the sky official or something that can do it in 20 seconds. Why would you hire the same people that made the mistake to review their mistakes, take 5 minutes in looking at it, when you can have somebody that's not in the stadium in a central city, rating went down to them, saying, oh, nope, I already looked at it, it's done. They have final say. That, I think we really need to move towards that. But don't need to talk too much more about that. I think the whole media finally got involved and was able to get in on that. And, hopefully we see the game cleaned up a little bit, Marco, because I love football, my man. And we need to see, as much fairness as possible, less variance with our sports betting, right?
Absolutely. And the biggest thing I've seen this year from my takeaway from the NFL so far is the road teams in the NFL. It has been insane, Kiev. Road teams, if you just blindly bet road teams this season, you're 54-33 in 2 pushes against the spread. That's 62.1% doing that. And if you go to away dogs, it's 37-20-1. That's 64.9%. Now, to put that in perspective of how far out of skew that is, going back from 2014 to last season, so taking the last 5 years as sample size, those road teams, 649 to 624, 51%, which is where we see almost every year it's going to fall generally between that 48 to 50, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, where, no matter which side you're taking, you're not making money. And this is insane. Will there be a regression? You would think so, but here's the dilemma for the books. Because the road teams are doing so well, and in most of the instances, it is going to be road dogs because, the NFL with parity and everything, you have more home favorites than you have home dogs. But if they start shading the numbers too much for these road teams to try to bring it into balance, you're going to have the public is going to be betting the favorites, which they bet no matter what. And that's why Vegas is slow to move it the other way. Yes, the sharps are going to take advantage of a good number with the road team, but you have, for every one sharp, remember how many squares you have that are just betting the home favorites or betting favorites, period, because that's what they do. They bet overs and they bet favorites.
Why stop something you're making money off of, right? It's like, why move the line for the sharps to hit it? And that's just like you said in like Jersey and other books, people that don't have options, they might know that they could move the line the way the public is betting, but they won't because they don't want to get hit on the other side because they know they're on the right side of it. They don't have that competition there that they need. So I find that very interesting. And I think that, why, great point. Why would a book necessarily want to move it there towards the home? Well, that's fantastic. I wish I knew that before the season. Well,
I wish I did too.
Right. But it's something you never would have contemplated be over 60%. That's like super contest type numbers, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's crazy. So, well, let's get right into some college and NFL football, my man. Let's start with a Friday game here, UNLV versus Fresno State. The line is up to 15 and a half-ish. Over-under is 55. Any thoughts on this one, Marco?
Yeah, there's only one way to bet this game for me, and that's to take Fresno State. But you're paying a premium for it. As you said, this line opened up like 13.5, went to 14 right away, and moved off that key number as the money come pouring in on Fresno State. And it's just the perfect spot. You got UNLV in a horrible situation, playing back-to-back games on the road. It's their 4th road game in 5. and they're coming off an upset of an SEC team. Now, granted, it's a bottom-rung SEC team, Vanderbilt, but it's a win. And the public's going to look at this and say, if UNLV can beat Vanderbilt getting 16, they should be able to do the same against Fresno State just because of that Power 5 conference factor, and it was an SEC team. But let me tell you this. UNLV hung with Northwestern, and they upset Vanderbilt. Two teams from Power 5 conferences that just totally overlooked them. They just, UNLV is what they are. They're not a good football team. But if you don't take them serious, anybody can sneak up on you. And the fact that they won outright, they're going to be one of my favorite phrases, they're going to be fat and sassy this week off that upset. And on the flip side, now you're going to get a conference team that's not going to look past them, and I think that's why they had some of the success that they had, and it's going to be a spot where Fresno State, also coming off an embarrassing loss, they got rolled at Air Force, 43-24. Right. They're going to be in an angry mood. They're not looking past anybody off a loss like that. So, and do it for UNLV, throw in the last factor. Bad enough they got to play a second week in a row on the road and off an upset. They got to do it on a short week. They got to do it on a Friday night, the Friday night limited schedule. It's a TV game. So that place is going to be crazy at Fresno State. And oh, by the way, 2 years ago, the last time UNLV came to Fresno State, they remember what happened. Fresno State lost outright as a 21-point favorite. They're not taking them for granted. It's a bad spot for UNLV. I got Fresno State winning by 21 or more.
Ooh, it sounds like a play for you then. That's interesting. I was thinking I wanted to play it, and it went past my number, and I even factored in everything you said. Fresno State had a way harder schedule. They played USC, Minnesota. They have a .85 net yards per play advantage. You're right, it's a get-up spot. They lost Air Force, and so I'm hoping the public comes back on UNLV, but the early sharps that don't put large limits down. There's a group of bettors that move the lines pretty well these days on Sundays and Mondays, right? And they if you're not betting $10,000, $5,000, I don't do that, but if you're not doing that, then there's some pretty sharper players actually kind of setting these lines, and that's why it went up to 15, 16. I'm hoping it comes back, but like you said, 21's your number. This is a perfect spot to bet Fresno State, so I'm going to think about it a little bit more, but now seeing that you might be making a play on it definitely has me thinking twice, my man. Tulane versus Memphis. Memphis laying 4.5, over under 59.5. This is a big game in the American Athletic Conference, both and me and the members, we have a little bit of an investment on Tulane preseason, so I already have skin in this game. But these teams look pretty close on paper, pretty close in net yards per play. They're both at about 6.9 yards per play on offense. I think about 4 point something on defense, about equal. Tulane has a little bit better of the running game. Memphis has a little bit better of the passing game. Both schedules on Sagarin look about equal. I think Tulane had a little bit tougher, though. Yeah, and I look on Sagarin, and I sometimes scratch my head. I mean, Tulane played Auburn, Army, and Houston with De'Ara King. Memphis faced Temple. And a good Navy team, but no Power 5 team really. And so it gets a get-up spot for Memphis after losing to Temple at that game. And I think they outgained Temple in yards too. I have a strong lean to Tulane at the 4.5, but I'm not sure if I'm going to have any skin in this game. What is your thoughts on it?
My lean is to Tulane, but where I think the better play in this game is the total. And as you pointed out, Memphis is coming off a loss to Temple. Temple's got a really good defense, and Memphis still was able to put up nearly 500 yards in that game. Temple's got the 11th ranked defense in the country, so the fact that they were able to still score against them tells me that they're going to be able to score against this Tulane team. And both of these offenses are top 25 offenses in scoring. We're looking at a total of 59.5, and I'm really curious as why it didn't come out in the 60s. I thought it should have been 62 or 63 in this one. Tulane, they had a laugher last week against Connecticut, 49-7. But you look at this team and, the points that they've scored. They scored 42 on Army. They scored 38 on Houston. They scored 56 on Missouri State. So what? But this is a team in Memphis that, their defense is no better than, Army or Houston. And I think you're going to see a shootout on both sides. I know Tulane's going to want to run the football. That's their bread and butter, but it does set up their passing game for them. And this Memphis team, they don't stop people. 30 points they gave up to Temple, and Temple's not an offensive juggernaut. Louisiana Monroe scored 33 on them. Granted, it was a track meet game, 52-33. And Navy scored 23, but Navy shot themselves in the foot in that game several times when they were in scoring position. Memphis was actually lucky to come out of that game with the 11-point win, and I'll take it. I had Memphis minus 10.5 in that one, and I felt I got lucky to cash that ticket. So I'm looking at the over in this one, but I do not disagree with you on Tulane as the live dog here.
Yeah, over the 3-4 points right there. Justin McMillan can chuck that ball, and he's obviously great at running it too for Tulane. So I was leaning over, and you definitely got me thinking more about that. So we'll see where this line ends up. Well, let's move into another game. Big 12 country. Baylor versus Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State laying 3 points, over under 64.5. I'm going to let you start this one. I'm kind of lost here.
Okay. Well, first of all, I got to say, I love what Matt Rule's done down at Baylor. He has built this team into Temple 2.0. He did a fantastic job at Temple, and, I got to give this guy credit. He could have wrote his ticket when he was a hot coaching commodity when he turned the Temple program around, and he went to Baylor. He went to a program that was in disarray at the time, knew that they had sanctions coming against him and everything else, and yet he wanted to go down there and build that program, and he's got them back. They're sitting here undefeated. They're ranked 18th in the country, and I'm going to pull out an old play from my playbook here, and it's when the polls say one thing, but Vegas says another. And I'll tell you, I'm always going to side with the guys that do this for a living, and I'm not talking about the guys that do the polls. I'm talking about the guys that set lines in Vegas. And the fact that Oklahoma State is the favorite in this game, yes, I know they're playing at home, but the line is 3.5. It's basically telling you that Vegas is telling you on a neutral field these two teams are even. And everybody's going to look at this and see Baylor at ranked 18th and getting points, and they're going to want to take them. They're also going to look at what I like to call the ABC factor. Both of these teams played Texas Tech in their last game. Baylor took double overtime to do it, but they came out 33-30 as a 10.5-point favorite. They get the win, but no cover. Oklahoma State, 2 weeks ago, played Texas Tech, got beat 45-35. So people are going to look and say, hey, Baylor beat Texas Tech. Oklahoma State lost to them. We're getting points with Baylor. Let's grab that. Oklahoma State's had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. This is a big game for them. Their offense, as always, is great. Oklahoma State, the problem's always been the defense. And Baylor is a team that, until the last couple games, they struggled against Rice. They scored 21 points. The Iowa State game, was a paint-dry game at the beginning. Ended up being a 23-21 game. They struggled to get points there. Iowa State, a good defensive team, but then they lit it up the last 2 weeks. Two teams that really, especially Texas Tech, not good defenses. I think this is going to be a game that could end up being a little bit of a shootout, the Big 12, the way we have them. But I like Oklahoma State at home in this spot. Give them the 2 weeks to prepare, and we're looking at a number that, hey, we can win by a touchdown, and that's the way I see the game. I see Oklahoma State winning by 7, so I'm leaning to the Oklahoma State side, and I just always love two angles I'll share with your listeners. I love taking a unranked favorite versus a ranked team, and I really, really love taking a unranked dog catching less than a touchdown versus a ranked team. That's my favorite angle, because it's just everybody looks at that and it's just so easy. Oh my God, they're at home and they're laying less than a touchdown and they're ranked, against an unranked team. All they got to do is win the game. Go ahead, play that play that as much as you want. Try to line up a little bit more for me. Then I'll take the road dog in that spot.
I wanted to bet Oklahoma State, but I was hoping it would be coming out at pick'em or -1. just based upon the rankings and things like that. But my power ratings have it about equal, so that's why it shows the -3 here. And I think that Baylor is kind of overrated. I do have a preseason investment on Baylor, but just watching them play, Oklahoma State looks better. And just like you said, this is that exact angle that everybody loves so much. Well, every sports bettor that's been doing it a while anyway, fading the AP poll and betting on the team that's favored. That under a touchdown, that's gold. And I think this might be an auto bet just because of that. Baylor hasn't played anybody besides Iowa State, man. Their schedule ranks 96th in the nation on KenPom. At least Oklahoma State has faced some adversity and played Texas, So not that their schedule is great, but they're pretty impressive on the way they score the game. And being at home, this is a perfect spot for them. So you're talking me into it, my man. I'm thinking that maybe Saturday might be the time to bet this. So I'm going to hold out till Saturday. That's what we're going to do. Well, let's move into a huge Big Ten game. Marco, I'm going to go first so you can either agree or destroy me after this one. We have Rutgers. No, just kidding. We have Michigan versus Penn State. Penn State laying -9, over under 45. This spread is telling you the night game, and Happy Valley with the whiteout was going to have Penn State take care of business and win by 2 scores here, but I'm calling bullshit on that, my man. I've watched Penn State against the harder teams, and I guess you can call Pitt a harder team in Iowa because those are the best teams they played. They were outgained in both of those games. Penn State has been so fortunate in the turnovers, I think they might have one of the largest margins. I looked it up a week ago, not after last week, but they're outgained by Buffalo as well. I like Clifford over there. He's a great quarterback. He's solid, but Michigan is more of the 4-star, some 5-star recruit type of team that is battle tested. They already faced adversity. They went to Camp Randall Stadium. They're trailing big in the game, scored a little bit at the end. Harbaugh's saying some really nice things about them this week. My power ratings, even with the extra point or point and a half here for Happy Valley, say this should be about a 6, maybe 6.5 point spread here. I think this is a bounce back spot for the Wolverines. I have no problem taking the 9 points, and I might even put a little bit of seasoning on that money line, my man. What are your thoughts about this one?
I'll be honest, whenever I saw your list and I saw this one, and it's a game that every show I do this week I'm going to have to talk about. And the beauty of sports betting for us, the books have to put a number up on every game, Kiev. We don't have to bet every one of them. We can just enjoy some of them, too. And I'll be honest, it's probably a game that I'm going to end up just enjoying. I hear everything that you're saying about Michigan and looking at the number here, and the number is huge. There's no question about it. When I'm writing my opening numbers down, I had to go back and look up at my screen a second time and, pull the glasses down and say, did I read that right? Because it does look high. But it is the whiteout, and that is probably, you got to add a point and a half to home field advantage the game that Penn State does the whiteout every year. It's an insane thing. I've never been there personally, but I used to live in Pennsylvania, as you know, from Pittsburgh, and I've had all kinds of friends that went to Penn State and has attended many of the whiteouts. It's like nothing else in football. It's a crazy scene. It's going to be tough. And then I'm looking at the defenses. And yes, Michigan's got a good defense too. But you talked about the Camp Randall game and said they faced adversity already. They did. And they failed. They failed miserably. They got the snot kicked out of them by Wisconsin. And Penn State has a much better defense. We're looking at the number 3 overall defense allowing just 3.8 yards per play. Think about that, 3.8 yards per play. But here's where I really like it. The Penn State defense is number 1 at stopping the run. They're allowing just 1.6 yards per play. Why am I so big on that is because, I thought coming into the season, year 2 in Harbaugh's system, that Shea Patterson would be a much better quarterback. He has not shown me that yet. And the fact that they're not going to be able to run the football against Penn State means for Michigan to win this ball game, you are banking on a big game from Shea Patterson. And I am just not ready to do that with him. And if they fall behind 2 scores in this game and have to totally abandon the running game, and Penn State can pin their ears and come back and come after the quarterback with pressure, we could get some of those turnovers from Michigan. This is a tough game. I lean to Penn State. You talked about that they only scored 17 points against Pitt and Iowa. I will point out that Pitt and Iowa both have top 20 defenses. And yes, Michigan has a top 20 defense as well, but as we saw against the quality opponent that they faced, Wisconsin scored 35 on them. They did give up 21 to Army, and they gave up 21 to Middle Tennessee State. The Army game, it was a 24-21 game, but they had a big lead in the Middle Tennessee State, and it was the first game of the season, so I can excuse that. But I look at Penn State, and they don't have a blemish on their card. Nobody has scored more than 13 points against them all year. I just don't know how Michigan's going to get the points, and Harbaugh, he has not been an offensive genius in college football yet. I just haven't seen it with any of these Michigan teams.
Right. Michigan, and just the last thing I'll say about this is, I don't know if Michigan's going to win this game, but they just got to cover 9, and hell, a garbage touchdown on a total of 45 points is extremely possible late in the fourth quarter if Michigan is down by 15, 14, 13 points. I can definitely see them doing that, because at least when they played the Badgers, they did rally. Michigan's a desperate team. They know that they still control their destiny if they win out. Beat Ohio State at Ohio State. Beat Wisconsin or whoever in the Big Ten championship game. This game is more important than the next week against Notre Dame. That's why I like the Wolverines. I like the low total. I like taking the points in the low total. And I like the athletes in Michigan. I think they finally gelled it together. But we don't have to sit there. Hey, you're not taking it. I'm going to take it as one of my main sides. It's great to have a little disagreement there. We'll see what happens when this game comes out, my man. It's going to be, Margo, this is going to be a great game to watch. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You're not going to see a lot of points. If you're looking for offense, you better keep turning the channel.
Yeah. Go to Hawaii or something and check them out. All right. Any quick games you want to throw out there for college?
Well, you guys know I'm a situational guy. I love finding good situations in both college and pro sports. And I've got a situation on Saturday that I like, and we're going to take a look. And it's a game that, is not going to be on any highlight reels. We're going to the MAC, and we're going to Kent State at Ohio. And you're going to say, my God, why is he even looking at this game? Well, I'm looking at Kent State. The situation they're in is not good. They're going to be playing their 3rd straight road game. They started this 3-game road trip, and it's all on consecutive weeks. There was no bye in there. They went to Wisconsin, got a payday, and got the snot kicked out of them. Then they played last week their arch rival on the road, Akron. Now, granted, you talk about, why anybody getting excited about beating Akron? When you're Kent, you get excited about beating Akron. The schools are minutes apart from one another, and that's their big rivalry. It doesn't matter how good or bad you are, your rivalry game is your rivalry game. And they won that game 26-3 on the road. Now they got to play on the road for a 3rd week in a row against a team, and by the way, 3rd week in a row on the road. This is going to have been 4 weeks in a row, or 4 out of their last 5 on the road. Just a horrible spot for them. I'm looking for them to come up flat here, and I got an Ohio team that was in a shootout last week, 39-36. They came up on the short end of that. I look for them to bounce back with this when they were coming off a road win in the week before when they beat Buffalo on the road 21-20, and that completed 3 road games in 4 weeks for Ohio U. Come home and couldn't handle the Northern Illinois team. Northern Illinois is a much better team than Kent State, trust me. I think you're going to see a high-scoring game, but I'm going to go ahead, take Ohio U, lay the 7.5, and I'll be honest with you, seeing the number with the hook on it, that was what sealed the deal for me. It's like they're just putting that little extra cherry on there for you to take the dog here. Think it's the live dog. It isn't. I'm going Ohio U.
All right, my man. Well, I'll tell you this. Ohio did disappoint so far this year, and Kent State has played a brutal schedule. Teams like Wisconsin, Auburn, and so you're right.
Arizona State, too, to open the season.
Yep, ASU. Yeah, very, very tough schedule there, so we'll see what happens with that, and thank you for that. So we have about 7 minutes here left, but we got to get in a little NFL, my man. Houston versus Indianapolis here, and I want to fade Houston here, and this is not a large play. It's a free play. They beat a terrible Falcons team a couple weeks ago, right? And I think they're getting a lot of credit for that. And then they beat an ailing Kansas City team that everyone looked at 2-3 weeks ago as the best team next to the Patriots. Everyone remembers that Raiders loss here with Indianapolis, but it doesn't look so bad after the Raiders just played the Bears and were able to do what they did against the Bears defense there. I don't care if it was in London. I don't care if it was in Australia or on the frickin' moon. They showed up the Bears that game. Whether the Bears are ready or not, the Raiders came to play. So we have to remember the Colts beat the Chiefs a couple weeks ago as well. It's not like the Colts are new here. I don't like O'Brien. I don't like their coach. I have to fade him in this spot as a kind of a letdown after beating the Chiefs, and I have to be on Frank Reich after the bye week here. I mean, coming out at Pick'em, my power ratings say it should have been a little bit better than Pick'em. I think it's -1. So I'm gonna make a small play on Indy. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you. You look at Houston, and the public's going to look and say they both beat Kansas City in their last game, but Houston did it in a 31-24 game. Indianapolis did it in a 19-13 game. Even though they both won, and they both won by basically the same margin, Houston's win to the eye test looked more impressive. And I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing the line that we're seeing. And as you said, the week before, they beat Atlanta 53-32. Forget anything that has Atlanta connected with it, because Atlanta is a total, it's a mess there right now. And they have no defense at all. They're going to face a defense this week. The Indianapolis Colts have played really good football this year, except the Oakland game. And I'll tell you, I was on Oakland in that game because it was a bad scheduling spot. Indianapolis was coming off of their home opener against Atlanta. Jacoby Brissett, that was the first time he played at home in a real game since Andrew Luck went down. Mm-hmm. And so that was a big game for him. He had to let down, and they had Kansas City on deck. It was this perfect sandwich spot. You'll see a good effort from Indianapolis. I like Indianapolis here. And I also think the total's a little bit high in this number because I think they're basing it too much on Houston's last two games. But they were, again, against two teams that don't play any defense. Right. They play defense in Indianapolis. So I'm going to wait and see how high the total goes, but I might get a little taste of the under as well.
Absolutely, and we have to remember Darius Leonard is back for this game, which he missed the last 2 or 3. Best player on the defense on Indianapolis. So that's absolutely a great call right there on the total. Okay, Philadelphia playing Dallas. Dallas laying about 3 points-ish. Maybe 2.875 or whatever, over under 48.5. Too many questions for me on this one. I'm just going to say right away, the Eagles, they need their cornerbacks back, Maddox and Darby. The Cowboys need Amari Cooper back. They need their tackles still questionable, Tyron Smith, a bunch of other guys as well. I threw this game out for getting to look at the injury reports. So, and I know we're pressed for time here, but I'm going to lean to the Eagles, Marco, because they're pretty desperate here, and I like Wentz. I like the fact that it's a rivalry game. People are probably going to fade the Cowboys, though. That worries me, being a lean to the Philly. Maybe the Cowboys is the right side. I guess, to me, it really depends upon who comes back. Plus, Deshaun Jackson might be coming back to stretch the field out for Philly. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
My initial reaction is I lean to Dallas in this one, and it's a bad spot for both teams, obviously. Both teams, struggling last week. Philadelphia, now, granted, they went against Minnesota in, one of the better defenses in the NFL. But my concern in the Minnesota game was not the fact that Minnesota held them to 20 points. It's that this Philadelphia defense let Minnesota and Kirk Cousins score 38. And I know Dallas has been struggling, but boy, if there's ever a defense right now to get healthy against, it is Dallas. But as you said, you got to look at the injury report. And I know Amari Cooper got banged up last week. He's listed as questionable. That's a key in this game. I think they got to have him on the field because it opens up so much more for both Zeke and Dak. When you have the triple threat there, the defense, what are they going to focus on? And Dak needs to have a big game and have a clean game. He had no turnovers last week, but the 2 games before that, Dallas turned it over a total of 6 times. They can't win that way. If they have a clean game and Amari Cooper's on the field, I think that you got to look to the Dallas Cowboys. And I'll be watching the injury report during the week and see if he gets an upgrade.
For sure, and Randall Cobb's out. Remember how bad the Cowboys were last year before the Cooper trade with the Raiders, and then all of a sudden it just completely opened up the running game and everything when Cooper came back. So that's a big player right there. That's a big guy. Any quick NFL games you want to touch on, Marco?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a play for Monday Night Football. You got the Jets in New England. This will be one of the first second meetings of the season. And, Kiev, people love to bet the overs on Monday night. I mean, that's what they do. They don't want to sit there and root for an under. And they're going to look at this and what they're going to say when they look at that total and the current total on this game, giving you the updated total. It is 42.5 across the board in Vegas. They're going to look to the first meeting and see that the total was 43, and it went over by 1 point, 30-14. But that was with the Jets with, their injury-riddled quarterback situation in that game. So they're going to say if they could score a total of 44 points in a game without Sam Darnold, obviously they're going to score more points in the second meeting when they got their quarterback back, right? No. New England will come to play knowing that they can't go through the motions this week because Darnold's back. And I think one of those scores in that game might have been a defensive score for the Jets in that one. I just don't see Darnold having the success against this team like he did last week against Dallas. And it wasn't that he put up, super big numbers. He did throw for 326, but he had a couple big plays in there. I think you're going to see a situation where the Jets still are not running the football. They have yet to crack 100 yards. How's that feel, Le'Veon Bell? Yes, I had to get one jab in there.
No bitter Steelers fans around here, is there?
No, not at all. And if they can't run the football, that's going to put too much pressure on Darnold. I like the under in this game. Monday Night Football, they put up a 42.5 for you. Come on. They're begging you. They want you to take that over. I ain't doing it. I'm on the under.
I like it, man. And that Giants-Patriots game should have went under if it wasn't for a special teams touchdown and a couple pick sixes. That thing was another situation. But, people are going to think about that too and probably hit the over. That's another great point here. Yeah, the Jets, the Patriots, they just have many different levels, and I don't even think we've seen their top level yet. This defense is the best Patriots defense that I've seen, I think, ever. And I'm just shocked, how this team is every single year, how great their coach is, how great Tom Brady is. It's just ridiculous. So love the play right there. And plus, with the Patriots, they're going to be running the ball. They don't have a ton of receivers that are healthy. They want to protect Brady. They had a couple tackles go out. I like the under. That is a fantastic play. Where can our listeners go to benefit from some of your knowledge, Marco? What's going on over there at Wager Talk?
Well, if you want to buy my plays, obviously you can go over to wagertalk.com, check that out. But guys, if you want some free information and good quality free information, check out all the videos we do at Wager Talk and the different podcasts that we do. And as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, my personal project this year was the Bet On It show. We started with the NFL show. The response was so good. People were clamoring for a college edition, and we answered that mid-season. We added a second show to the lineup, and it's just been insane. I couldn't in my wildest dreams think that we were going to get off and running the way we have. Last week's show, Kiev, we topped 55,000 views on YouTube for a brand new show that's only, 7 weeks old. I'm just proud of it. The content that we provide has been good. The two shows combined last week, I gave out 11 plays for free. We went 8-3 with those. So, am I going to do that every week? Hell no. But we're going to win more than we lose for you guys. And whether we, even when we're not winning, we're laying down information for you that you can use yourself and learn how to do some handicapping and some of the things that we look at as pros. I mean, we're not just giving you, hey, I like this, just like we did today on the show. We break the game down for you. Every play is a handicapping lesson. We go through what we looked at and tell you why we did what we did, and I'm proud of the project. It is my little baby, and he's growing already, so we're happy with that.
The show is awesome. I've watched it many times. You guys kill it over there. Fantastic, Marco. All right, everyone. That was Marco D'Angelo from WagerTalk.com. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Marco in Vegas. Marco, thank you so much for blessing us with your great information. Always a pleasure. You're one of the fan favorites.
Hey, anytime, Kiev. No problem.
All right, and now it is time to go through a few of my free plays for college football week 8 and NFL week 7. And mind you, the spreads might not be completely accurate. I do change it when I kind of write my notes, but a lot of these were picked on Sunday and Monday and Tuesday. But we're going to start right away with Army versus Georgia State. Georgia State is plus 6.5. Over under is 57. So I got burned last week with Army, and I should have paid more attention to Western Kentucky's run defense, allowing 3 yards per rush. But I'm not going to let that affect me this week. Instead, I'm going with the same theory I had on Army last week against Georgia State that isn't nearly as good against the triple option and cannot stop the run. The Panthers allow 5.6 yards per rush this year and haven't even faced a good rushing team. Okay? Last year, Georgia State lost to Georgia Southern, who is another option team, last game of the season by over 20 points. They can't play the option. Army, on the other hand, still has a pretty good defense, allowing only 5.2 yards per play and 21 points per game against teams like Michigan, Tulane, Western Kentucky, obviously. This is a complete matchup play for me, eliminating possessions from the Panthers. The Panthers need a lot of possessions to play fast. Army will pound the ball, suck the clock down. Georgia State averages second in pace in the nation at 85 plays per game, while Army is third from last at 61 plays per game. Last stat I'm going to give you is that the Georgia State Panthers are 4-2 this year, yet they are over minus 1 yard in net yards per play. Their defense gives up over a yard more than their offense gets per play. That's a lot. This one is a total matchup. Easy for me. I'm calling out the fraud of the 4-2 team. I'm going back to Army. Please don't let me down. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Army minus 6, 2.5 stars on that baby. Next play, we're looking at Florida going down to South Carolina. South Carolina plus 5.5, over under 48.5. Everyone's asking how Florida will get up for this game after the LSU game. Well, it can go only two ways. I mean, the look of defeat on their offense playing this game, or they can really step it up knowing if they win out, they are in the playoffs. One thing I do know is that their defense will show up because defense travels. And even counting that tough LSU game, their defense only allowed total throughout the year 14 points per game average and 5.2 yards per play. Florida's got a darn good defense. South Carolina, on the other hand, is in a huge letdown spot after beating Georgia. And they they have some of their skill positions a little bit banged up in question for this week's game. Ryan Helinski was in a knee brace. He's banged up. He's going to play. But another thing you can't ignore is South Carolina. They've only been allowing 23 points per game and 5 yards per play. And they've played the hardest schedule in college football against Alabama, Georgia, Missouri, and North Carolina this year. Just a brutal schedule, but their defense has been stepping it up. Due to Helinski's injury, I see a lot of them running the ball. They're going to, eliminate Florida's possessions here. They're just, both these teams are middle of the road when it comes to yards per play and points per game. Middle of the road. The defenses are stepping up. South Carolina's defense is going to step out at home. I love the under 48.5 points here. And put it down for 2 stars, premium shared play. All right, the last college football game, besides the ones we gave with Marco, we're going to look at Clemson versus Louisville, plus 23.5, over under 60.5. My gosh, I don't know why this under kept going down. Clemson, they've been disrespected in the marketplace. Finally, after almost losing to North Carolina. Now, for the first time in a long time, they're not a top 2 team anymore, according to the AP poll. Okay, they have LSU and Bama there. Trevor Lawrence isn't even in the Heisman discussion right now. Okay, not even in the Heisman discussion. So, this, if anything, should motivate them. It should motivate them to put some points up with their studs like T. Higgins, Travis Etienne. This is a spot for Clemson to kind of try to gain some redemption. The question for me is not so much if Clemson is going to cover the 24-point spread, which I actually lean Louisville here, and I wouldn't be blown. My mind wouldn't be blown if Louisville won this game, but it's if Louisville can score 21 points, because that's what I care about. But is it true that Clemson is third in defense and yards per game? Yes. They're 7th in points per game. But who have they played? The answer is nobody. and nobody in the top 40 in yards per game Clemson has played. Louisville ranks 17th in yards per game at 480, 19th in yards per play, and 21st in points per game at 36.4. Clemson is averaging 39 themselves while they turn the gas off in the fourth quarter. So Louisville's at home. I expect a lot of points here. This over, I don't know why it moved down. I love this over 60.5. I put it down for 2 stars, but we might have to up that a little bit. All right, well, I'm not going to go over the full NFL card because we did so long in this podcast, but I am going to give you 3 NFL plays for this week, some free plays. And we're going to start right out with Baltimore versus Seattle. Seattle's minus 3.5, over unders 49. Here's a spot where I believe I'm catching a little value. Seattle used to be the best home field in football, but things have changed. The different defensive players from years back. Most of the whole team is gone minus, Wagner? Seattle has played 3 home games this year, right? And here's what they did. They struggled to beat Cincinnati and barely won that game by 1 point. Almost lost it. They lost outright to a Saints-led Teddy B, and they beat the Rams by 1 point due to Legatron missing a 42-yard field goal. They are a brutal 0-3 against the spread at home. Now they face a Baltimore team that hasn't had a hard schedule either, but they perform decent on the road. Seattle happens to run the ball a lot, but Baltimore's strength has shown against the run, allowing the 8th fewest yards this year on the ground. Seattle also lost their insurance playmaker here in Will Dissly. Will Dissly was having a hell of a season. He was kind of Russell Wilson's bailout guy. He gone. Ravens, relatively healthy. Marquise Hollywood Brown, most likely back to stretch out the field. These two teams are pretty equal in yards per play. Russell is having that MVP season, but how many weeks in a row can you keep these crazy performances up? I think the back door is open here. I think the 3.5 is a little bit too much in the NFL right now, especially with a Harbaugh-led team that can kind of scheme his way past the Seattle defense. I'm taking Baltimore with 3 in the hook. It is a 2-star premium shared play.
Sprinkle that shit.
Next game is Kansas City versus Denver. Denver +3. Over-under is 48.5. Why did this line get driven down? There was some public action and sharp action. Not a ton of sharp action. There's not like a big money discrepancy, but it got driven down. Kansas City's pretty banged up. A cornerback, a defensive tackle, 2 offensive linemen. Sammy Watkins is out. But at what point in the season are you going to find more value on Kansas City? What point? Pretty much none. They lost 2 games in a row, but they still have their skill positions. They still have a healthy Travis Kelce. Damian Williams is back. Shady McCoy's running well. Tyreek Hill's back. They still got that. And with Mahomes, he's pretty elusive. I mean, how good of an offensive line does Mahomes need on all those rollouts? Denver's shown pretty well the last few weeks, but who have they beaten? The banged up Chargers and the Titans. In reality, we know that Denver isn't a team built to come back, right? We don't. And they're going to be down at some point, I think, a few TDs or so. Even with all the Chiefs' woes, they still rank 3rd in overall DVOA, which is an efficiency rating that I go by, while Denver ranks 18th, 3rd to 18th. And it's not like the Broncos are not without their injuries. They lost Bryce Callahan for this week, nickel, corner. What are they going to do there? Tackle Juwan James. Emmanuel Sanders is banged up. Can't forget that Bradley Chubb 2 weeks ago went out for the season, right? This is a value play for me. I have to take the Chiefs. It's a value play. No offense is better. 7 yards per play. Kansas City also has a 0.9 net yards per play advantage over Denver. Book it. I'm taking the value. Kansas City. When else are you going to take them? -3, 3-star premium shared play. Last game we are going over is Houston versus Indianapolis. -1. Over unders 47.5. And I covered this one with Marco, obviously. I want to fade Houston here. They beat a terrible Falcons team 2 weeks ago. Last week got revenge on an ailing Kansas City team. Everyone remembers the Raiders loss, but it doesn't look so bad since that Bears game. Fading Bill O'Brien. I'm giving props to Frank Reich. It's an auto bet for me almost here. My ace in the hole is Darius Leonard. He led the league in tackles last year. He's a guy that's going to fire this defense up, okay? Houston has some injuries to their cornerbacks as well here and their offensive line. They're not exactly healthy. Huge letdown spot after beating Kansas City. And this is also a power ratings play because I actually have Houston always a slight favorite on a neutral field. Like my power rating number is -2.5, but I'll take the -1 here due to the situation. It puts me over the top. Indianapolis -1 is a 2-star premium play. All right. Well, that's all we have for our plays. And 1-3 in teasers this year. Yeah, I think I'm going to pass. I'm 1-3 or 1-4. I got to double check. I'm passing on teasers for this year. After watching that Packers versus Detroit game when there was, I don't know, maybe a dozen or 24 missed calls that could have favored the Lions. When the Lions jumped the Packers up 13-0, they just one-sided it to get them back in the game. It blows my mind how many penalties that was called, and it wasn't planned. It was just inadvertent stuff. The officials subconsciously want to keep a close game. I don't know what the hell the problem is, but either way, how are you supposed to trust that when it literally gives double-digit swings to the points? I think the Lions easily win that game by double digits if it was called fairly. Started right after the 13-0 Clothesline on the receiver. I believe it was Galladay got clotheslined and they didn't call it. And I don't know. I am not doing teasers because of that anymore this year, unless there's a really good spot. I'll let you know if I do. But it's just so much variance. Reason you sports bet is you hope the variance sometimes evens out or it goes in your direction, I suppose. And we love football, but at the same time, I can't trust the officials enough to do teasers here, and the teasers have not shown well this year. That's why you haven't been hearing about them. All right, now it is time for
The Sharp Side of the Force.
The Sharp Side of the Force is brought to you by uwager.lv. For a 50% sign-up bonus, please visit uwager and use the promo code ODDSBREAKERS. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we're going to start with Sharp College sides. Remember, it has to be 20% difference for the side or 30% difference for the total. We have sharp money on Georgia Tech at Miami from plus 19 to plus 18, a 49% difference between number of tickets and the money. Sharp money on Akron at Buffalo plus 17.5, a 49% difference. Sharp money on Indiana at Maryland -1 all the way to -5.5. It's a 20% difference now, but that was a big move. East Carolina, sharp money at Central Florida, plus 33, a 22% difference. Can Central Florida put up as many points as they have before? It's not quite looking so much, and it looks like their defense took a step back. Kansas City at Texas, plus 21 on Kansas City. Kansas at Texas. Sharp money on Kansas, plus 21, a 32% difference. Sharp money on BYU hosting Boise State, plus 6.5, a 20% difference. Sharp money on Ball State hosting Toledo at +1, 35% defense. Toledo's quarterback is questionable. Sharp money on Oregon State at Cal, plus 11, a 30% difference. Sharp money on Arizona at USC, plus 9.5, a 46% difference. Money coming in on Khalil Tate there. Sharp money on Washington State hosting Colorado, -12.5, 21% difference. Colorado's very injured. Sharp money on Mississippi State hosting LSU at plus 18.5, a 30% difference in the sandwich spot. Plus sharp money on Oklahoma hosting West Virginia at -33.5, a 22% difference. Sharp money on Ole Miss hosting Texas A&M at plus 6.5, a 25% difference. Sharp money on South Florida at Navy at plus 14, 37% difference. Huge overcorrection right there. Dual action on FIU hosting UTEP at -8. 98% of the money is on FIU. Sharp College totals. Louisiana at Arkansas State over 67-68, a 37% difference. Sharp money on UNLV versus Fresno State under 53, a 49% difference. Sharp money on Clemson versus Louisville under from 63 down to 60.5, a 40% difference. You know what I said about that one, all right? Sharp money on Florida State versus Wake Forest over 69, a 32% difference. Sharp money on Central Michigan versus Bowling Green under 54, a 46% difference. Sharp money on Tulsa versus Cincinnati under from 52 down to 47.5, a 31% difference. Sharp money on NC State versus Boston College under 51.5, a 30% difference. Sharp money on Kansas versus Texas under 62.5, a 39% difference. Sharp money on New Mexico versus Wyoming under 54 down to 48.5, a 30% difference. Sharp money on NIU versus Miami of Ohio over 48.5, a 35% difference. Sharp money on Oregon State versus Cal under 52, a 32% difference. Sharp money on Kentucky versus Georgia under 46.5, a 37.5% difference. Sharp money on West Virginia versus Oklahoma under from 65 down to 63, a 46% difference there. Dual action on Auburn versus Arkansas over 55.5. 98% of the money is on the over. They expect Auburn to put the pedal to the metal, I believe. Dual action on Charlotte versus Western Kentucky under from 50 down to 48. A 94% difference, 94% of the money is on the under since it was dual action. I think it was about 80% of the tickets. So I'm thinking about this one. I'm close to betting it. A couple of other things I want to check. Western Kentucky has a great defense. Charlotte needs to run the ball. Minnesota at Rutgers, over 47.5. 99% of the money is on the over. And it's only a 50% difference. So about 50% of the tickets is on the over, but 99% of the money, that shows you something. I think Minnesota scores 40 some points. That's another one to look at. All right, sharp NFL sides. You have Miami versus Buffalo at plus 17, a 21% difference. You have Tennessee at Pick'em to -2, a 20% difference. So the whole switching quarterbacks from Mariota to Tannehill is the reason for that movement, but can Tannehill fire him up? I don't know. The Chargers are desperate too. Sharp NFL totals, dual action with Arizona versus New York Giants, over 50.5. 97% of the money is on the over there. Miami versus Buffalo, over 40.5, a 30% difference. Minnesota versus Detroit, under 45.5, a 30% difference. And there you have it. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, letdown spots, want me to handicap a game for next week, the sharp money, please feel free to tweet us at the Odds Breakers. Also, if you like the podcast, please subscribe and please go to iTunes or Google Play and rate and review. I'd really appreciate that if you are getting any value from this. Really appreciate you listeners out there. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. I hope you win all of your bets, all of them. And remember to go get some winners.